the bigger thing is building lasting relationships. You've got teammates now that were previously strangers to each other. They're teammates, they're friends, and you've built new connections of people in the Richmond community that otherwise wouldn't have been connected. And so I think that part is incredibly important, of people from obviously different walks of life. We obviously have quite a few players that played for Richmond United in our youth program that have come together, but we have players that played Division 1, Division 3. It didn't matter. The playing field for us was level, and really it was all about what did you bring to the team, and could we build the culture that we really wanted to represent the Richmond community in year one.
Hey, Richmond, welcome to America's Healthiest City. I'm your host, Will Melton, and today on the show, we have Kimmy Cummings, the head coach for the Richmond Ivy, our new wonderful USLW soccer team here in Greater Richmond. Before we get started, if you are new to this program, I invite you to visit americashealthiestcity.com, where you can learn about our 10-year community partnership to make all of Richmond the healthiest community in America by 2033. It does take the entire community to move us there, so I invite you to check out the ideas board and learn what it takes to become an ambassador. But without further ado, I will welcome Kimmy to the program. Kimmy, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super grateful. I had a great opportunity to attend games this season, and I did not attend all of them, which I regret, but it was great energy, and I have had the opportunity to absorb all the media that's come out since the season's ended, and we'll talk about all that. But welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for the support at the home games. That's awesome.
Yeah, my wife is a big soccer fan. She played in school. She was a referee, and now you guys have gifted us with this wonderful new thing. Tell me a little bit about, I start this program with everybody. I know that you're native to the region. Tell me a little bit about your, sort of upbringing and soccer history here in the region, and take us a little bit back with you to start us off, and then I'll have some other questions.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in the Richmond area. I played soccer, youth soccer for the Richmond Kickers. And soccer was very different back then. And I say back then like it was forever ago. It's really just incredible how different soccer is over even the last 5 years. But when I was coming up through the youth soccer programs, there really wasn't a ton for young females to play at a high level. And I vividly remember my mom saying like, hey, like if you want to do this thing and you actually want to play soccer and only soccer, because I was doing gymnastics and softball and soccer, and she was kind of like, hey, it's kind of hard to like cart you and 6 kids around at the same time. And so like, if you could pick one, that'd be great. And she fully supported the ability to do multiple sports at the same time. But when we sort of aligned on soccer being my number one sport at that point, we went the route of like, okay, let's put her in some female programs and see how it goes. And it was okay. But ultimately ended up playing with the boys. And I was skinny as a twig as all get out, and the kind of thing of my mom sent me in sweatpants to boys practice because she didn't want anyone to know how small I was. And it was kind of like, if you can get your foot in the door and you can show that you're good enough to play with them, then it won't matter that, you're tiny. And so I did wear sweatpants in I would say the heat of summer to make sure nobody knew that I was tiny, and ended up playing with the boys growing up. And so I played with the boys for quite a bit of time, I think probably until U13, U14 year, and then moved over to the girls side. It had become a little bit more competitive, a little bit more, I think, higher stakes at that point. And so I played for the Kickers. It went through quite a different clubs at the time, but ultimately landed with the Kickers and the youth game. And then post youth soccer, I was a recruited walk-on at East Carolina University, go Pirates, and enjoyed my time there. But ultimately left the Richmond community for 4 years, but ultimately always knew I would kind of come back once I graduated. So that's a little bit of like a dive into like youth soccer for me, but born and raised in Richmond, obviously happy to come back to Richmond after graduation.
And just a little bit on your professional background. I don't know that soccer pays that many people's bills. So you're actually at Capital One as well, great employer here in Richmond. Tell us a little bit about that. How's it been sort of juggling both of those roles? Has Capital One been? I imagine you've had a ton of your colleagues out there to games to cheer you all on.
Yeah, it's Capital One's incredibly supportive of I think just that what I would say the dual kind of lifestyle that I live from a work perspective. I've been at Capital One since 2012. I started coaching in 2012, and so I've never really known life without both. And so for me, like one of the more exciting things was seeing kind of my worlds collide as Ivy came about, and having coworkers who all knew I coached soccer, but at the youth level. And so many of my coworkers are not coming out to youth soccer games, but all of a sudden I'm starting to see coworkers in City Stadium, and I've met their kids now. And one of my coworkers, her daughter was a ball girl for us in our second to last game. And so it was kind of a perfect marrying of the two. And obviously incredible to have the support of what I would say is like my full-time engineering career colliding with my full-time soccer career.
So very, very different jobs, I would imagine. You're not spending a lot of time out in the sun when you're doing that engineering job.
Not quite, but it's always funny. Everybody already says like the jobs are so different. And at the end of the day, the way I view both jobs is both jobs are coaching people, and they're just different types of people. So you're coaching adults versus youth and then kind of the perfect marrying of the two, which is Ivy is young adults. And so while the actual underlying atmosphere and environment is very different, at the end of the day, it's all coaching people and helping people reach their goals.
And on that note of leading people, I mean, you're a relatively young leader at Capital One, but you have substantial responsibilities. Would you say that the lessons that you've learned over your career in soccer, both as a youth and as an adult, have taught you lessons that you're able to take to work there?
Definitely. I mean, I think a lot of it is just like holistically across my life and everything that I do, including outside of work as a whole, is kind of how do I make everything around me better? And whether that's with people or the environment or the atmosphere or whatever it may be, essentially everything I come into contact with, I want to make sure I've made better after I leave it. And so that's super important to me. And I think it's something I've been able to apply in all aspects of my life.
Well, I really appreciate that perspective. And, I spent a lot of time talking to leaders through this program and just in my career. And there's always, sort of this keen self-awareness that I see in leaders. And I just appreciate your perspective. So we'll come back in just a minute, but I'm going to take a quick break. And we'll dive a little bit more into the season and the team.
Awesome.
When we asked ourselves, what could we do to stop the tide of plastic bottled water, we never thought we'd start a water brand. But an idea grew and Richmond Water was born. Now we're replacing single-use plastic on the shelf with collectible, refillable aluminum bottles of water. And we're installing refill stations throughout RVA, launching a movement to refill. It's your turn to make a splash. Find your bottle of Richmond Water or add refill stations to your next event at drinkrichmondwater.com.
That's kind of cool.
Welcome back to America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. Today I am remote and I have Kimmy Cummings, the head coach at the Richmond Ivy, our new soccer team, women's soccer team here in Richmond. And if you're tuning into this program for the first time, please check us out on social media to see short clips from this show, catch updates from our full episodes. Both at LinkedIn and YouTube and everywhere else you can find us at America's Healthiest City. Kimmy, I want to get into the season because you guys brought a ton of fans out to City Stadium this year. I won't make any comparisons to the Kickers, but you've just had a tremendous showing. And I felt the energy there. I've read some commentary in news articles and, on clips from the news. And you guys have just done a tremendous amount to inspire the community. Can you tell me a little bit about the interactions that you had with fans, throughout the season and, as the season came to a close and postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start with kind of the very first game. I don't know that I will admit, I don't know that I was fully prepared for what we were going to see on that very first game day in City Stadium. And I remember vividly, like throughout the day, getting updates on how many tickets had we sold, and we're getting really close to a sellout. And I remember one of my own family members reaching out of like, "I'll see you at the game," and I'm like, "Cool, did you get tickets?" And they said no, and I was like, "You might want to jump on that." And so like I think I wouldn't say like I didn't expect less from the Richmond community, but I definitely didn't expect this and this amount of outpouring, this amount of support. I remember game one talking to fans afterwards, and there were so many fans that had never seen a soccer game before. And they just came because it was women's sports and it was something new and it seemed like it would be a cool atmosphere. And so like that part for me was really exciting, just to have new soccer fans. And I think from there, just building on it throughout the season, the interactions with the fans, there's quite a few moments that really stick out to me, and two of them in the last game where I was talking to some fans, and one of them was a young girl. It's funny looking through media pictures after the game. I actually ended up having a picture of when I was talking to her. And she had said, paraphrasing a little bit, but she had essentially said along the lines of that was going to be her one day. And I, for me, that's super exciting to see a young fan excited about kind of seeing themselves out there. And I said, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "Well, how old are you?" And I essentially we landed on like, "Cool, I'll see you in 5 or 6 years at this point." The conversation kept going in the sense of she goes, "No, like I want you to write my name down." And I was like, "Okay, I'll write your name down." And so I grab a marker, I write her name down. And she goes, "I want you to remember the name because I absolutely will see you in that many years." And so like that to me was super cool, where it's like all of a sudden we've built an environment that I didn't have growing up, which is young females, young males are seeing themselves and seeing things that they can then go achieve. And they're actively wanting to go chase those dreams. And that to me is super exciting to be a part of. The other interaction I had probably 30 minutes later with another fan, she had pulled me aside and she had tears in her eyes and she said, "I just wanted to say thank you." And I was like, "Well, thank you. Like this is as incredible as it is because of the fans that and the support that we got from the community." And she goes, "No, like my daughters and her friends standing over there genuinely believe that this will be them one day, and that's what they want. And you've created something far bigger in Richmond than we could have ever dreamed of." And like that to me is what we did this for.
Well, I will tell you, when I read that article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, I was moved to tears because it is so powerful to hear that inspiration coming from the mouth of a young person. And I didn't hear it, but I read it, but it was just really moving. So I thank you for that. So everybody's in tears, tears of joy, celebration. It wasn't a perfect season, but you guys did a really, really great job out there on the field. Tell us a little bit about what you hope as you think about next season, and as you think about your role in this sport, what do you hope to be able to accomplish in a bigger sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things here. Is like when we early on talked to Madeline McCracken, our sporting director, when we had talked about building out the roster, the very first thing we discussed was building out a roster that was for the longevity. We didn't want a one season roster. We wanted a roster that had players on it that we would see next year and that fans start to build relationships with. And so in all decisions that we were making, it was sort of like, is this a roster spot we want to offer for multi-years? What does that look like? And how do we really think about the future of this program versus just being like one season at a time? And obviously there's certain decisions you have to make it kind of a single season decision potentially. But everything we did was kind of for the longevity and really building out something that our fans could kind of get attached to and want to be a part of. And so I think that's the biggest thing is like, as we talk about what we want going forward, one, the hope is that we've built a really strong foundation for future years. And then obviously as a coach, of course, who would I be kidding if I said, I don't want to continue to try and make pushes for the playoffs and that sort of thing. So that's obviously there. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, do I think the season was successful? Yeah, 100%. Like the quotes I just touched on with our fans and the community that we built, and even the players, like hearing kind of anecdotes from our players after the fact of like after the season, how awesome it was and how much they miss playing with us. And it's been it's been less than a month and they're already like, can we do it again? That to me is the success. And so while the score sheet may have not shown the results that we wanted across the board, we still had a really successful record for the season, especially our inaugural one. But I think for us, it's way bigger than that of what we built in the Richmond community.
I would agree. And you talked a little bit about the players there for a minute. Can you talk more about the impact that it had on players, the sort of the feedback that you received from players throughout the season and after the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think for players, there's quite a few players that we've chatted with after the season. And I think even more so of like a lot of these players came from college programs. I actually just 2 days ago talked to one of the players' college coaches about how did I think the season went for her and what things does he think he can build on. And so like that to me is like helping them in the future sense as well. But I think the bigger thing is building lasting relationships. You've got teammates now that were previously strangers to each other. They're teammates, they're friends, and you've built new connections of people in the Richmond community that otherwise wouldn't have been connected. And so I think that part is incredibly important, of people from obviously different walks of life. We obviously have quite a few players that played for Richmond United in our youth program that have come together, but we have players that played Division 1, Division 3. It didn't matter. The playing field for us was level, and really it was all about what did you bring to the team, and could we build the culture that we really wanted to represent the Richmond community in year one. And so the relationships these players have built with each other, for me, has been really exciting just to see and be a part of. But I think further than that is, what things can these players then take from our first season into where they go back to play, whether that be college or they're trying to get to the next level. If they can take some of that confidence or some of the experience or some of just the natural playing to the next their next adventure, that to me is also success, and that's part of what I think we were able to accomplish.
So a big dent in women's sports here in Richmond. I mean, just a huge showing of support from fans. I felt when it was announced, it really seemed to me like Richmond was going to show up in droves to support this and show the community, show the world that Richmond supports women. What do you see as the future of the sport for women, both locally and as you look to the larger world of soccer?
I I think it will continue to surprise us, right? And I don't even say surprised anymore, because I don't know why I continue to be surprised. But I mean, if I look at where sports were even just a year ago, and pre-college basketball, the women's tournament, and like how much women's sports grew just in that kind of tiny time frame, and where it is now. I do suspect kind of across the globe, women's sports continues to increase, whether that be just soccer or multiple other sports. I think just in general, women's sports are seeing more attention. And then from there, like, what does that look like in the Richmond soccer community? I hope to see more fans out at college games that I go to. We have quite a few colleges in the local to the area, D3, D2s, D1s across the board. And so I think just having more fans out in those places, and the idea being, if we've got some Richmond Ivy fans that built connections with players that play in our community, and there's quite a few, that they'll see them play in college as well. And so I think just continuing to build off of it. And then where do I think we'll be in 5 more years? It's hard to even imagine, quite honestly. Like, just the growth that we've seen over the last couple years, the growth that we saw just from May to the end of June with Richmond Ivy, to where we are, I think, headed. For me, it's just incredibly exciting about the potential.
And as far as your future goes in the sport, I imagine, are you signed on for a multi-year deal with Ivy? How does that sort of thing work in sports at this level?
Yeah, so USL, typically every coach has a 1-year contract, and then after the season, you kind of revisit the contract to renew it. And so that's kind of the place that we are now. Is it was a 1-year contract, and next year would be the exact same 1-year contract if the club decides to extend. And so that's really where we are. That's true for every coach. So that's not necessarily unique, but I definitely hope to be back to coach Richmond Ivy next year.
Great. Well, we're going to take a little break here, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about Richmond, the whole community, and we can discuss some ideas about ways that we can foster, this creative culture, this healthy creative culture that we have here. We'll be right back. Welcome back to America's Healthiest City on 106.1 FM, ESPN, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. You can catch us each week on Thursdays at 6 a.m. here on the network or on ESPNRichmond.com. And we are now going to be streaming this show live at 6 a.m. on LinkedIn streaming and YouTube streaming as well. Today, we have Kimmy Cummings, the head coach for the Richmond Ivy. I'm super excited to have this conversation. I am a fan, and it has been impactful for me to spend time with the other fans at City Stadium this season. So I want to turn our conversation a little bit toward the Richmond community. Obviously, what has happened with Richmond Ivy has impacted Richmond, and people are up and moving around a bit more, I think, as a result of just this one little change. So tell me a little bit about how you see Richmond the community and our pursuit to be a better place for everybody. What role do you see Richmond Ivy playing in that? Do you think that the brand that was created worked to foster any of what we have now? Just share your thoughts with me if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting piece about kind of Richmond Ivy and what we were able to build with the just overall community within the community is I think just how in general the importance of being involved in sports is both good for you physically. I think it's great for you mentally. I think there's a piece of intentionality there, which is if young females or adults or males, females, it doesn't matter. Like if you're watching that and that's inspiring to you, and I would love to believe that the majority of our fans walked away inspired. I think it can help you be better both as an athlete, as a human, just in all aspects of life. And so I think that's what we saw with Richmond Ivy is just the ability to kind of, as we built on the community piece, that there's things that the fans then can take away about the importance of being active and being involved with exercise and just healthy in general. For me, is kind of a really important and empowering thing to walk away from Richmond Ivy with.
So, we often ask our guests to, share an idea that we could put on the ideas board. I'm going to change that up a little bit and maybe look to you. Did you have any specific advice for your players throughout the season on ways that they could stay fit and stay healthy and stay ready and train for the game? What sorts of things are you incorporating into that program?
Yeah, it's interesting. The USLW season for us is super condensed. And so often we would see a lot of our conversations came down more to like recovery and how do you appropriately recover from game to game when you're playing on a Wednesday and then you're going to turn around and play on a Friday, and maybe one's on the road and one's at home. And so you're talking about varying levels of, I think, intensity, and one could be on the road in Pennsylvania, and then you come back and you're going to play in front of 5,000 plus fans in City Stadium. And so the electricity that you kind of get from those environments is very different. And so for us, it becomes more so like you're playing in the heat of summer. There's obviously aspects of hydration and how you make sure your body's appropriately prepared for that. You're playing at interesting times of the day. So we may catch a bus at 10 a.m. to play at 7 p.m. And so you're talking about how do you then get meals in before, how do you get meals in on the bus that are healthy enough that then allow you to have the energy that you need to play and perform at the highest level. So a lot of the conversations that we had with players is more so, how do you recover from game to game, and what things do we need to do at training in between those 2 days? And so is it a lighter recovery session to make sure we're adequately prepared and we've got the legs underneath of us? But hydration, recovery, rest becomes a really important part. And so making sure that you're just timing everything incredibly appropriately to allow you to perform at your highest.
And on that note of fitness, I think we often don't get to see, what coaches are up to. What sorts of things are you doing to stay fit and to, be prepared for your job? It's, I know it's hard to do that too.
Yeah, it's an important part. Activity is an important part of my life, and making sure with as much as I have going on, making sure I balance that. And starting my day in appropriate time to allow me to work out every single morning. And so that's how I start my day. Every day I'm up. And I'll drink a bottle of water before I work out, and then I'm straight into working out every morning. And there's some times where it's a little bit different of a workout. Maybe it's a walk instead of a run or a bike ride, but generally being active every morning for me kind of is that caffeine intake, for a lack of a better way to say it. It gives me the energy to make sure that I'm ready to prepared to, I think, take the long haul of the day. Obviously doing two things and working professional career as well as coaching soccer after, it's a long day. And so making sure that I am also having the fueling my own energy and filling my own cup, working out is a big part of that. So again, it's running, biking, indoor kind of fitness equipment, or even like I've got a home gym in my garage that I've invested in just to make sure that I'm not losing time in the car to do that. But obviously know that I'm super fortunate to have had all of those things. But for me, there's nothing that beats getting outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't help but to think that you have some wonderful advice for young women and girls out there who aspire to be great in what they are interested in, whether it be soccer or something else. What advice can you share for young women out there?
Yeah, I think it's one, set goals and don't be afraid to be lofty with your goals. It's okay to dream big and chase them and use the people around you to help reach those goals. I didn't get to where I got to without the network around me kind of helping get me there. And I've still got lofty goals to go chase. And what do I want? And, coaching in the USLW and coaching for Richmond Ivy, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if that was a goal of mine, it probably wasn't even on my radar. And then it was kind of like, wow, look at what this has become. And so I think my biggest piece of advice is set lofty goals for yourself. And don't be afraid to go get them. If you want to, whether it's in sports and you want to go play Division I or professionally one day, set that goal and then build a network around you to go achieve it. If it's something outside of sports directly, again, set the goal and chase it and find people and surround yourself with people that are going to help you get there.
Well, I think that's great advice for everybody out there trying to do something great. So I thank you for that. I'll take it and run with it. Before we go, a couple of things I wanted to ask you. Is there somebody out there that inspires you, someone here in Richmond who's making a difference, who we should be interviewing and telling their story?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very first one that is immediately going to come to mind when you say inspires me, and I think making a difference, Mikael Ibarra, who's the assistant coach for Richmond Kickers. He's also involved in the academy and kind of our player pathway. He's tied across the board in so many aspects of soccer for me, but as a person, I think he ranks at the top of the list of people that inspire me to continue to grow and be better. And he pushes me to not only be a better coach, but a better person. And that to me is kind of what we want as a beacon in Richmond, is someone that's just working to make everything around them better.
And so fans know where they can reach you and share their support. What's the best way to get in touch?
I'm on social media. You can find me there. Across the board. And so I'm also out in the community. I'm at Kickers games quite often. I run into fans there as well. And I'm always happy to chat with anybody.
Well, Kimmy Cummings, thank you so much for coming on this show. I know our fans will love the conversation. I certainly did. Congratulations on all your success this year. And I wish you the best in the gap between next season, and rooting to have you back again next year. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. This was America's Healthiest City on ESPN Richmond 106.1, part of the Mike King Biz Media Network. We hope we will catch you each week at 6 a.m. here on the network, ESPNRichmond.com, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We'll catch you next week.